Hi, Ian.
Hello, this is Ian. How are you?
Hi, Ian. It's Michelle Ragsdale and a couple other folks from Microchip here, and then we've got Rick Anderson with Fair Use Building and Research Labs on the line as well. So here from Microchip is Mark Lacombe, who's the Global Academic Program Sales Manager for Microchip, and then Jeremy Cobb is Product Marketing Manager with our 32-bit product division. And then Rick from Fair Use Building and Research Labs, they were responsible for basically all of the software this board. So I'm sorry about the mix-up on time.
Oh, no worries. It's okay. I'm Ian. I'm from Dangerous Prototypes, and we do an open source hardware project every month. I'd say, a good 90% of our projects have PIC microcontrollers in them, either an 18FJ or a 24F. So can I ask, is it okay to record this for notes and maybe to post it online if it sounds okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Do you have the PowerPoint presentation with you there, Ian?
I do. I've looked through your PowerPoint presentation and also perused your GitHub source and looked through the board files. And the demo boards came today, and I haven't had a lot of time to play with them, but I've got an LED to blink.
Oh, good man. Well, what I'll do is I'll just step through the slides. I don't know if you want to open them up there. And
yep,
then,
I got them open.
Okay. Just to give you kind of an overview of the project just before we start, what happened was I came over to the academic program a couple of years ago from our 8-bit apps division. And when I came over, I started, and I'd never heard of Arduino, to be quite honest. And when I came over, I started hearing Arduino this, Arduino that. Customers were asking for PIC-based Arduino solutions, and I started finding out that more and more schools were starting to integrate it into the curriculum, which is definitely where my interests were mainly focused at the time. So we went out and we started exploring some of the options that were available to us. A lot of them, there were some PIC-based Arduino boards out there that claimed to be Arduino compatible, and we explored these and realized quickly that these were hardware compatible. What we wanted to do was make sure that there was something that was software compatible, simply because there's this huge repository of resources, code examples, especially when you talk academics. There's curriculum, there's textbooks, all sorts of nice free resources out there that the academics could take advantage of. So we figured that the best route here would be to actually come in and not compete against this with a unique solution, software solution, but maybe perhaps join the community and build on what was out there and try and enhance what was already in the community. So that was the idea of coming in with a 32-bit platform, simply because the Arduino community didn't have anything like this, and we thought that this would be a great introduction to PICs. So if you look at the first slide, Microchip and Digilin announced first Arduino-compatible 32-bit MCU development platform. And we called it the first one simply because not only is it hardware compatible, but it's also software compatible. And
what it looks like to me is you've got an Arduino-shaped PIC32 development board. I mean, the Arduino is pretty straightforward. It's an AVR and a power supply and a couple pins. It's not a big package. The hardware is 32 bits and way beefier than an Arduino. And both boards are one's $3 cheaper and one's $10 cheaper than the similar Arduino Uno or Mega.
Right, it's $15 to $20, depending on where you go.
The twist, what really separates you from all the other 3.3-volt Arduino wannabes is that you hacked the actual original Arduino development software to support your PIC processor. You've got your sketches compile and run on the PIC without any changes, and beginners can just jump in and use the same client that they know and love.
Exactly. Now, Rick Anderson, who's on the phone with us, Rick and Mark actually did quite a bit of the work on the original Arduino Ide. So maybe what I'll do is just ask Rick to kind of give you an overview of what exactly he and Mark did, just to make sure that you're fully aware of the changes that have been done. Rick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the idea wasn't to just do like a quick hack or a quick copy. The idea was to make changes that would go back to the Arduino community and be able to be folded into the actual software. So the changes that are there are pretty subtle, but they're really powerful. And the major change was that we introduced the idea of platforms.txt, which allows you to define your platform, and inside of the platform you can define your boards. So with that particular change, which can meld right back into the original distribution, the vendor only needs to have the hardware folder prepared and ready to go, and they can just drag in their hardware folder and it'll be the whole thing. So really it's multiple platforms, not just a single platform in the way we did it.
Are you working with the Arduino crew to merge your source back into the trunk?
Absolutely. So what's going on is that they're trying to get 1.0 out the door. So to put these changes in, it would have a pretty big impact. So the idea is to work with them to get the 1.0 out and then get these changes staged to be directly after that. Plus the other thing is that I've got lots of little fixes that can go in before then because they don't change the direction of the software very much.
And before then, are you planning to release your own version, your own compiles with your changes behind the updated versions until it's merged?
The idea is that we're going to keep following it along. So if there's patches to the current version, like if they come up with version 23, we'd be making updates for that. But since 1.0 isn't really slated until September, we're basically working over the summer to move all the libraries over to the 1.0, in sort of a community way. Like everybody who's been working so far is continuing to work to keep it in parity while those changes aren't in the main software.
Oh, that's fantastic. We had some people ask in the forum if 23 comes out, if they're going to be stuck at 22. But it sounds like you're merging all the changes in as you go along.
Yeah, so we have, I don't know the timetable for 23, but I do intend to, keep us up to speed with that because a lot of it is library changes, and that's where we really want to be in parity. And there's sort of different ways of thinking about libraries. There's core library files that are common for all Arduino, and then there's some extension files. So what we've done is, as a group, we've maintained the core files across the platforms. And that way the abstraction layer of Arduino can be programmed to directly, so your schedules can work in both.
I noticed on the back of the PIC32 box, it talks about USB 2.0 on the go, Ethernet, and CAN controllers. Are you including open source libraries that support these with the multi-platform IDE?
The idea, I think, Mark and everybody, I think the idea is that all of this has to be open source. It's derived from the same thing, so it's not like new features are going to be delivered in a closed source kind of way. It's already and make them open source and continue that direction.
That's not supported already?
Not yet, no. It will be down the road, but what we did was we came out with something that just supports the core. We wanted to make sure that the community themselves had an opportunity to play around with this thing as well and get some input from them as to what they would like to see. So, I mean, this is very much a community-fed beast, and it's always evolving. So, by coming in with the core functionality of the core libraries, along with some hardware compatibility, we were thinking that we are enabling the community to help out as well. It's better to have all engineers involved as opposed to just a few, So. Sure
thing, and that's a really good point. Microchip already has excellent drivers for USB and CAN and Ethernet, but the licenses don't allow sharing, and that's a big part of the Arduino community. There's no way they can take, for example, your USB stack and port it to your new open platform. So do you have any suggestions for the time being for users who want to use any of these fancy new features in their open source projects?
Rick, do you?
Well, if there are existing projects that people are looking to port over, the underlying PIC32 compiler and everything is there in an open source way as well, so people can actually dive down into that area So I mean, so like, there's not a conceptual limit here. And there's sort of a practicality is that I believe a shield is going to be coming out that's got the USB and the Ethernet on it, and for that shield to work, people are already undertaking the library updates. If we can get those projects that they're working on sort of highlighted, maybe there's more way to get involved or see where they are.
Microchip doesn't have any intent to share their existing drivers with the open source community to support these boards?
I wouldn't say that. What we're doing right now is we're discussing putting out a modified version. But we want to make sure that this is separate from what is currently made available at Microchip, simply because there's support issues, there's other issues behind this that we have to take care of. You know, as soon as you put this out into the community and it's open source, everybody has the ability to go in and modify it. So you can very well imagine from a corporate stance, this is something that's very hard to police quality-wise, etc. So what we want to do is make sure that these are separate entities. So we'll continue on with what we have, and we call it our Microchip Applications Library, continue with that as it is, and then have a separate entity that would go out as an open source. And we're in the process of discussing just logistically how we can do that.
I think that's really important. I just noticed that even the box advertises these features, and I imagine currently there's no way to do that and to actually use that peripheral in an open source way, let alone with the environment that you've released so far.
Well, I mean, this would be as it relates to the libraries themselves that already exist. However, I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody in the community from going out and developing something.
Because I mean, the Lupa libraries are out there already, and you could, being able to interface them back to the PIC USB, is a big possibility there. So there are a couple of ways to get to it. I think the only issue really here is about timing. When those libraries come out and when they can get out. And if an open source project starts to actually, provide that library, how long would it take?
And I can tell you right now that now that the board is finally out and the software is at a state where you can start developing in it, that this is definitely our priority is those extended libraries.
Okay, thank you. That's really good to know. How about a lighter question? How do you suggest people take advantage of the speed and extra capabilities of the PIC32 in their existing Arduino projects? Well,
a couple of things that we saw. Mark Sproul, who also worked on the software along with Rick, had a really cool demo at Maker Faire. I'm not sure if you were able to stop by our booth during that, but we had the existing ATmega 2560, and we had an NKC LCD shield that we popped on, and there was a graphics example on there, and you could see when you put it onto the ATmega 2560, the graphic would come up, and it was obviously a little bit slow. As soon as you swapped that out and threw it onto the Max 32 board, it was just phenomenal, the speed difference on there. So
yeah, it was a Mandelbrot example, so it had a lot of calculation, and a fixed amount of calculation, so when you ran it between the two devices, it was a very apples-to-apples comparison. So you get that benefit, especially in the graphics area. This means raw speed there. The chipKIT forum actually has some people starting to benchmark things. And I mean, overall, there's just basically a 5-time style improvement as a rule of thumb.
And not only that, but these products are, this is just scratching the surface of these products. I mean, if you go down and we're hoping that the community takes this and runs with it. I mean, there's some really sweet features on these PIC32 products. Like you can do things like actually subdividing the peripheral bus to a different clock setting than what the microcontroller's core is actually running at. All sorts of nice low power features on there. Some advanced peripherals. There's additional peripherals to the basics. The Max32 expands the UART functionality. I think it's 5 times. Way more I2C SPI. So, and that was the whole idea with the. If you look at the Uno 32, there's some additional jumpers and that sort of thing on the board. Coming in, we wanted to make sure that these boards fit with what's out there now, with the existing footprints, but gave you the opportunity to move outside of the box by keeping pin function or allowing you to get at those additional peripherals pins. So you'll see on the Uno 32 and the Max 32 even, there's additional row headers, there's additional jumpers, that sort of thing.
Separate bus clock speeds is a really nice feature. We had a user ask in the forum if you guys had any suggestions for porting libraries that have strict timing requirements, and maybe that could possibly be a way to handle that?
Absolutely.
Have you run into any other problems with timing requirements in libraries?
Well, yeah, if now because you can subdivide that peripheral bus clock, if you go in and say you have a couple of different timing peripherals that you have calculated out to work at 80 megahertz, which is the default that the peripheral or that the core has been set to, and you alter that peripheral bus clock, which you could basically do with a single line of code, you could ultimately mess up the other peripherals. So you have to be very wary of that. So anything like the timers, the I2C, the SPI, the PWMs, anything that's timer-based, you have to be wary about that because they do run off of this separate peripheral bus.
Can we talk about the compiler for a second?
Sure.
What's the difference between the chipKIT compiler and the normal C32 compiler that you can download online?
Did you want to do that one, Rick? Or?
I don't use it too much, but basically, it's the open. You know, what is it? It's got the good open source licensing. It has the C++ features that help make it Arduino compatible. It's up on GitHub as well, so you can all check it out there. So that's another advantage to it. And I think it sets the platform up nicely so that if if people are using the Arduino abstraction layer and then they want to get down into the PIC32 stuff, basically it's all right there, available for use.
Okay, and both are based on GCC. But C32 has optimizations that are restricted after a 60-day demo. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, are those optimizations always enabled in chipKIT?
I don't think there's anything like that. I haven't heard of any sort of restriction at all in that scenario. The only real thing people talk about is the debugger not being available. Right. And I mean, that's, that's a final issue.
As I understand it, the optimizations are there.
Yeah, I mean, and also feel free to go in and check it out. I mean, it's up on GitHub as part of the chipKIT project. So.
Actually, I perused your Git source repository today, and one of the first things I wanted to bring up was the compiler code. I assumed that was going to be in hardware PIC32 compiler, and all I found was a license text file, and it actually basically says, "We forbid modification and redistribution."
Sorry, it's a separate GitHub project.
And what license does that fall under?
All I know is it's supposed to be the GCC derivative, so it has to be GPL. So.
Well, in general, all of your compilers are GCC derivatives, but you
actually,
usually
I'm
header files and things
so I actually don't have compilers.
Okay, well, I understood that Microchip keeps your header files in a separate license, and the license I read here on the compiler is that notwithstanding things that you have to release open source, everything else is still all rights reserved. And it says the compiler license is to redistribute, but you can't modify it in any way.
Yes, all I know is that when the software is bundled, it has a build process. And when the build process goes in, it copies the library into that particular folder. So whatever goes out with the Arduino has that license on it. So that's that's in that folder. But the stuff in the separate GitHub project has, it's set up differently. So I would really recommend looking at them as two different projects.
Yeah, I'd really appreciate it if you could send me the link to that GitHub project sometime. We're really interested in understanding more about how you're licensing this compiler. We have several forum members who have ported your GCC-based compilers to other platforms and run into distribution problems with Microchip saying, no, there's elements of this that we don't license for redistribution, so you can't share your ported compiler with anybody. We're just curious what the actual licensing on this compiler is that goes out with the chipKIT.
And you have to realize that this is a separate compiler than what you will get from our website. This is, and thus it has been renamed. It's to be referred to as the chipKIT compiler. There are some inherent differences from what you'll find on the Microchip website, including changes to licensing. There's changes to functionality, etc. So you should not compare this with what's on the Microchip website. It is a different compiler.
You can get to the repository for it. If you know where the Max32 repository is, we realized we hadn't put the compiler public until last night, but if you go to the main chipKIT32, there's 3 public repositories under that, one for the IDE, one for the C compiler, and one for the bootloader.
Oh, you have the bootloader up now.
Yeah,
that was the other thing that's supposed to be there.
Oh, excellent. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I see this now.
And all of the compiler licensing, I mean, we're putting everything out there with and for these chipKIT boards under the same licensing. We're not trying to put a compiler out there and keep any type of Microchip licensing that we had before, because we're giving all of this to the community.
Oh, that's fantastic. That was a big question we had. I think a lot of people perused your source and didn't find that segment, and were curious given our experience with the compilers in the past. So that's just fantastic. If it's all open source, I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, that was our goof that we didn't put it public before. We were concentrating more on the IDE, but we had the Microchip compiler people, like we had them work on this C compiler. So if you do find some kind of licensing statement in there that doesn't stick along the same lines of BPL of the Arduino stuff, definitely let us know, because that's a mistake and it would have been something that just carried over from using the project before.
Oh, well, thank you. That's just absolutely fantastic news.
Go ahead.
Okay, and can I ask a little bit about shield compatibility? Have you done a lot of testing on that?
We've done a fair amount. Obviously, we haven't checked every single shield, and that's why you'll see statements that say, as long as the shield can operate at 3.3 volts, it is likely to be compatible. So
chipKIT is a 3.3 volt system, and most shields are probably designed with 5 volt I/O in mind.
Right, but usually to get a logic 1, 3.3 volts is quite adequate. But we can't say it's compatible with them all.
Yeah, you'd suggest if it needs 3.7 or higher, that maybe a pull-up resistor or something.
I can't comment as far as that. All I know is that if it can operate at 3.3 volts, you should be good to go.
RuggedCircuits.com noted a few issues with the pinout, such as there's no pulse width modulator on D11, and also there's not interrupts on every pin like there are with the AVR. So I assume that would cause some incompatibilities as well. They mentioned their rugged motor controller.
Right. I'd need to confer with Vigilant on that. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it on the phone today, but we can certainly, any questions you have concerning the hardware, we can send it along.
Yeah, if you can send us any of the specific information that you've been talking about, just throw it in an email, and we'll consult with Vigilant on the fact.
Yep.
Thank you. Did you consider, for example, using a PIC24 or making a PIC24 version? It has a peripheral pin select that lets you move the peripherals to the pins that you need.
Right. That could be a possibility down the road, but logistically we started with the PIC32 because of compiler functionality with C++.
Do you have any plans to add peripheral pin select to a PIC32?
Stay tuned. You will find that answer out within 6 months.
Excellent. Do you plan to have a database or in some way track incompatible shields? Is there somewhere we can see a list?
There isn't right now, but I don't know if you've made it to the chipKIT forums. If you just go to chipKIT.cc or chipKIT.org, if you want us to start a forum topic, there's a thread for forum suggestions, and that would be a super one. If you put one in there, I'd be happy because somebody would actually give me a suggestion. So.
Do you have a lot of users yet?
Actually, we have 49 users, 35 topics, 117 posts with 4 attachments.
Well, that's pretty good. You launched just a week ago, is that right? A week or so?
We haven't even publicly announced the forums with it. Somebody was just strolling around and figured it out and started putting it up in comments on Hackaday. So they got it quite get done, but yep, they're
yeah, but it's exciting. There's good questions out in there too. I really like the feedback I'm getting.
Yeah, and right now there is a huge attention on the forums from not only Microchip, but from the software guys at Fubar Labs, Rick Anderson, Mark Sproul, the Digilink guys. So there's a lot of attention on this because we want to make sure, like, we understand we're coming into something that we're all very new at, except for Mark and Rick, of course, but Microchip definitely, Digilink definitely. So, you know, any suggestions that the community has, any problems they find, or any recommendations for future products, anything like that, we're very open to seeing.
If you guys have anything else you want to share with me or would like me to post on the blog, let me know.
Absolutely. Like I said, any kind of, we want to make sure that this is, the community is very involved with this because we realize this, the Arduino is very much community driven, and we want to make sure that the community realizes that they have access to any of us to discuss any of these topics. If they post on these forums, this is going to go directly to the core team that helped develop this. So just know that any comments or suggestions you have will be taken with the utmost seriousness, and anything we can do to incorporate the ideas, we will do.
Yeah, and any from my point of view, any questions about the IDE or code, like code documentation in a platform, I'm putting together the detailed platform.txt stuff. So, you know, I'm really interested in being able to answer things in that space because what it does is it improves Arduino overall, and I'm going to be, you know, staging all those things for melding back in. So those conversations are awesome from my point of view.
Right. And like I said, the idea here is that we want to come in and contribute. We don't just want to come in and be there. So, you know, expect to see a lot of tutorials, a lot of videos, a lot more application examples out there in the coming months. Any more questions, Ian? Or?
That was it. I took questions from the forum, and we'll post up your answers as soon as I can. We're going to give away the boards that you sent.
Oh, cool. Now, if for whatever reason you find that you're getting a lot more questions on certain topics or anything, just shoot Michelle an email, and she can get in touch with me, or you know, maybe Michelle can actually send you my contact information, and then you can get in touch with me directly, and we'll make sure you get your questions answered, be they software, hardware, whatever.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Okay,
All right.
Have a good day, guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.